Good evening and welcome to the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners meeting. We're happy to have all of you here with us tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Carver Elementary student Andrew Vargas. Andrew, if you can come up to the podium. Andrew Vargas is a hard-working 5th grade student at Carver Elementary School. He is the son of Lorena Trevino and a valued member of Miss Wise's classroom. Andrew is kind and helpful to everyone in the classroom. He's always willing to lend a hand. Andrew treats all students with fairness and understanding. He's conscientious and consistently completes quality work. Outside of school, he enjoys football and soccer. So Andrew, we wanted to have you here tonight and recognize your wonderful schoolwork and what a good friend you are, and have you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic in which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to be led in invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches. We have Mr. Bruce Tarnaski from St. Eugene's Catholic Church. Good evening, Mr. Tarnaski. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Let us pray. Lord Jesus Christ, we pray that you guide us always, satisfy the needs that have to be met during this meeting. Father, guide us so that the meeting can be productive, and let us be effective and decisive. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? A motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
There's no one signed up tonight for public comment. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And we're going to move into our recognitions, reports, and presentations. The first is the recognition of Carver Elementary School teacher Amber Wise. Ms. Wise, if you can come up to the podium. Amber Wise is a 5th grade teacher at Carver Elementary School here in Wendell. She is currently in her 8th year of teaching. Amber is a part of the leadership team, the Media and Technology Advisory Committee, and Digital Portfolios team at Carver Elementary. She's also a member of the Wake County Public School System Science Corps leadership team, where she's working with district leadership to enhance science instruction. This November, Amber had the opportunity to present at the NCCTM State Math Conference in Greensboro, North Carolina. She loves working with children and hopes to make a difference in education. We just wanted to have you here tonight and thank you for everything that you're doing for our kids at Carver Elementary School. So thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. We'd love to have volunteers out at Carver anytime. We can always use help in the classroom or donations to help make school more fun for students.
Thank you very much. Item 4B is the presentation of the Town of Wendell Fiscal Year 2019 Audit Report. We're going to hear from Ms. Phyllis Pearson of Petway Mills in Pearson. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
We conducted the audit during the fall of 2019. We, based on our testing, issued an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best audit report opinion that auditors will give. It's a clean audit. It means that we found the financial statements to fairly present the financial position of the town and to be prepared in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. We also issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion on your compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, and other matters, as well as on your internal control over financial reporting. Your governmental activities, the total assets were $17 million, total liabilities $11 million, total net assets $5.5 million. You had total cash $4.1 million, total revenues $7.1 million, total expenses $6.1 million. Your business type activities, you had total assets $1.6 million, Total liabilities, $1.6 million. You received total revenues of $51,000 and spent $51,000 on interest costs. That's what that money was designated for. The general fund, you had $10 million in total assets. Total liabilities, $2.5 million. Total fund balance, $7.4 million. Total revenues, $7.2 million. Total expenditures, $6.4 million. Your unassigned fund balance, which is the amount that is available for the commissioners to use at their discretion, is $6.3 million. That exceeds what is the recommended amount of 8% of prior year expenditures. If you were to meet the recommended amount, it would be $513,000. So you meet or exceed the recommendations. There were no changes in audit accounting policies. The items that we consider the most sensitive dealt with capital assets and debt, and there were no changes in your use of estimates. We had no disagreements with management. Management's representation letter was signed timely and promptly. Report was submitted timely to the local government commission. We had no uncorrected misstatements or audit adjustments of more common language during our process. The statements that we have made available to you are exactly what you've been receiving from your accounting staff throughout the year. And we thank you for the opportunity to conduct the audit, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Pearson? Anyone have any questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to move into item number 5, our public hearings. Item 5A is an evidentiary hearing on a special use request by Westerlund and Scherer Hospitality, LLC, to permit a bar or tap room at number 1 North Main Street. We're going to hear from, I believe, Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a special use request to operate a bar or tap room at 1 North Main Street. Tonight you're being asked to hold a public hearing and consider taking action on this request. This would require the swearing in of anyone coming to give testimony as part of that. Would you like to commence with that first or do the staff report first?
Let's go ahead and hear the staff report.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the applicant is Westerlund and David Scherer LLC, Westerlund and Scherer Hospitality LLC, that's made the request for this bar at 1 North Main Street. Because this is an operation where they would be having less than 50% of non-alcohol sales, it would be considered a bar and tap room under our use code, rather than sometimes you can have restaurants or other uses that have alcohol consumption on site but don't fall into that category. Per their application, they would be open Sunday through Saturday for varying hours. The latest would be to midnight on Friday and Saturday, and they do in the future also planning on having some midday lunch hours added to what their initial hours would be. But for a special use case, I always like to share kind of the hours of operation as it might relate to adjoining properties. And in this case, you can see that they're not staying open later than midnight on any of the days per their application. They did include a justification statement within their application that stated it would operate as a private club. That's something everyone may not be familiar with, and it's kind of an ABC rule regulation, so I wanted to bring that to your attention and explain that a little bit. Per North Carolina's ABC rules, if the establishment's food sales don't exceed 30% or more of the venue's overall sales, then it is classified as a private club under the ABC rules. That doesn't mean there's any desire to be exclusive, but this is just kind of a compliance or a category under the ABC rules based on their anticipated food sales. There still would be a full kitchen, a full menu, but they're not thinking that their food sales would meet that threshold, so it would fall under that category. So you'll run into these certain bars you just walk into, other ones you might pay $1, give your email address, and now you're a quote member, and then you go on as you normally would. This area, 1 North Main Street, is right at the corner of Main and 3rd Street. Many of you are probably familiar with this building. It falls within our DMX Downtown Mixed Use District, highlighted in red and completely surrounded by other DMX zoned properties. But it does require a special use permit, hence this hearing in that DMX district. There's also an additional standard saying that it must be at least 300 feet from any church, school, or residential districts, and they specify which districts fall into that category. Staff has looked at this, and it is in compliance. It's more than 300 feet from all of those items. Based on their use, they're anticipating 49 seats, which would require 13 parking spaces if full. This would use existing on-street parking that's in the downtown area, like most uses in the downtown, so there's no off-street parking included in this. It's an existing building that completely envelops the entire site. There is significant exterior and interior renovations underway, and there's no other improvements proposed beyond that building envelope that exists now. Staff has reviewed the application, deemed it to be complete, and has not identified any violations of the general requirements needed to approve a special use permit, which you do have included as an attachment to your report. That's all staff has in terms of presentation. We do have a representative of the applicant here, or the intended operator here tonight.
Let's hear from the attorney about the rules of procedure on the evidentiary hearing first before we get going.
Thank you, Mayor. These, as indicated, are quasi-judicial proceedings, which means they are not legislative. They're not the typical rezoning request or text amendment that's presented to the board. You are required to follow certain due process requirements that, with regard to these applications, including no ex parte contacts, right to cross-examine witnesses, testimonies given under oath. Those due process requirements are in play, as well as the obligation, as in a court proceeding, to make your decision based on the evidence presented at the hearing and not evidence presented in some other means outside the hearing. Make your decision based solely on what's presented today. And the statute requires that the decision must be based on substantial, relevant, and material evidence, and that does not include lay witness testimony on issues such as any effect on the value of other property, any effect on traffic, or any other matter that would typically require expert testimony.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who wishes to speak or present testimony now is going to step forward, and we'll get you sworn in with the clerk. We'll hear from the applicant now.
Hey, how are you? Appreciate you having me here tonight. My name's David Scherer. I'm the owner of First Street Tavern in Clayton, North Carolina. I've been in the business, the restaurant industry, for over 27 years now. And I'm just here to answer any questions you might have about the operations or what we're trying to do.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Comments, questions?
Can you explain to us a little bit more about your, the private club aspect of it? I read in there where there's a nominal fee. I just was kind of curious about how that would work from your
So, excuse me, fighting a little cold.
No problem.
What that is basically with the ABC commission, if you don't have 30% of your sales, you are automatically classified as a quote-unquote private club. And what you have to do is charge an annual fee. It can be any fee you deem fit. And what that means is basically, as Dave was saying, it could be $1, and you just charge that. You get an email address and a member number. What I have with my place is First Street Tavern is we have an application we have people fill out. It basically just gives them an opportunity to say anything they might want to see or have us do, give their opinion basically. And then we keep that on file. They get a card with that, a membership card, and they can bring, as he was saying, it's not exclusive at all because you could be a member and you could bring 50 guests with you. So it's basically just kind of a formality, so to speak. But the way the ABC Commission works, if you don't have that 30% food sales, they are going to make you into that classification of a private club. And being that this is obviously something new to Wendell, we don't really know where we're going to fall with the food sales. My place in particular in Clayton, I'm at that 30% mark. I'm always teetering between 28% and 32%. So with that, we just decided to go that route initially. Whereas if we start really selling some food, especially when we get into lunch hours, that's something that we could go back to the ABC Commission and say, hey, we're going to be reclassified as a restaurant.
Any other questions, comments?
A question, and maybe for David. How does this differentiate? Like Wine 101 purely doesn't sell food, but I don't ever remember becoming a member of Wine 101. I've been to Watson Ward in downtown Raleigh and did become a member. I've got a key to the key bar in my pocket. I'm just trying to figure out how this compares to like an Everest Wine 101. What are those two classified? And that may be a David question.
I really can't speak to it. All I can think of is maybe Beer 101, since they're more of a package store, could be under a retail permit. But honestly, that's probably a question for you.
That's my understanding as well, is that in these bottle shops, and it's also based on on-site consumption versus off-site consumption. So the bottle shops are selling a lot more six-packs or whatever even a growler or something you're taking with you, not necessarily consuming on-site. So that's kind of treated differently than the bar tap room where you're there to drink. You're not taking that with you.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to the special use request? All right, Mr. Bergmark, have you got any closing comments?
Not really, just, again, like I said, we didn't really see anything that stood out as violations or issues in terms of the standards for approving one. Other than that, just if there's any other questions, we have to take them.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Mr. Bergmark, gentlemen?
I'm going to recuse myself from the vote, though.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the special use request for 1 North Main Street.
Okay, so we have a motion to grant the special use request for 1 North Main Street. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anyone opposed? Okay, I heard some sounds. Thank you. All right, item 5B is a public hearing on the zoning text amendment to sections 15.6 and 15.15 of the UDO regarding Town of Wendell special use permit procedural requirements. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a text amendment request. This may be familiar, or it will be familiar to you all, in that staff briefed you on this item in terms of looking at our special use requests, how they relate to our development review or TRC review process, looking at making some procedural changes per the direction of the board. We were asked to put together, or at least investigate, a draft proposal to look at changing this, where a special use permit request would come first with a reduced site plan requirement. So we evaluated our process, did a peer review with 8 other municipalities, found those results were mixed. There wasn't really a prevailing practice in terms of which came first, full plan TRC review versus special use permit review and approval. The board directed us to look, or at least start off looking at option number 3, which is having a reduced site plan being required with a special use permit rather than a full site plan before that full plan was reviewed by the TRC. So we put together that draft language, took it to the planning board for review. If there's any questions about the 4 options we looked at, I can bring that back up. But again, you looked at number 3, at least that's the primary direction we got in terms of taking something to the planning board for consideration. So that option number 3, the benefit of that is it allows the applicant to kind of receive their answer from the town board in terms of the zoning site approval before they're expending significant funds on the detailed full site plan that would go later to the technical review committee. If this, so the board would receive that reduced site plan that will get into what's included in that at the SUP hearing. You would make your decision. There could be conditions attached to that decision that then inform the TRC. If it's approved by the town board, then it moves on to the technical review committee. They'd still be reviewing that full development plan, so it's still being created, reviewed just after the SUP approval. If there's a significant change as a result of the TRC review compared to what was approved by the town board, then it would come back, but it would have, again, it would have to be a significant change. It's expected that minor changes could occur as they go through their plan review process. If the board denied this SUP process, then it never has to go to the TRC for review at all. So we've included within, as an attachment, the full list of what's included in the master plan, the full development plan. Just if you want to be able to reference that compared to what is in the reduced site plan, which I'll go over in a moment. This did require amendments to two sections of the UDO, 15.6 and 15.15. 15.6 goes into minor and major site plans. This essentially involved adding some language within tables and flowcharts to reference the reduced site plan rather than a master plan, which is the full plan, within those tables and flowcharts, and including that within the overall process. So I won't go through this whole thing, but again, it's mainly modifying these existing procedural charts to show the new process that requires that reduced site plan at the special use permit prior to it going to the technical review committee for the full plan review. And the same thing is done for both minor and major, which are the two sections within this. Within 1515, this is the actual language on the special use permit process. So here we're making amendments. You can see sections that are crossed out and sections that are underlined, eliminating the references to master plan and including the reference to the reduced site plan requirement within the procedural chart. We also added a note attached to this to make it clear that the reduced site plans for special use permit approval only, that you still have to develop that full development plan for the full TRC approval following the SUP approval. We also wanted to clarify that there are certain uses that come before this board that may not really have a site plan at all, and the language, the way it was before, didn't make it clear. You could interpret it to mean everything has to have a master plan, even if it was just an existing tenant space and the user was just changing, or the use was changing, but it wasn't triggering any new parking, wasn't triggering really anything that would be shown on that master plan. So we included language within this to basically say that, a change in use that doesn't require or involve any site improvements shall not require a site plan to be submitted meeting that reduced site plan or master plan criteria, and then gave kind of an example of what that might be. But if you think a lot of times about, maybe a very small church use in an existing building where there's already plenty of parking, you don't really need them to develop a new site plan for that. So the reduced site plan requirements, what would that actually be? It looks like more than it really is, although if you compared it to the full plan requirements, it's about half of what was there. So it gets into just identifying the kind of legal boundaries and kind of the plat requirements, adjoining owners, and then like section C, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is all essentially about establishing the boundary. Section D gets into total acreage of the tract, total number of acres, total number of housing units. If it's a major site plan, it would require a building elevation for review and inclusion as part of that. And then the location of proposed buildings, loading areas, streets and alleys. You aren't necessarily getting all the details of those street and alleys, but you'll have at least where they, generally where they are and what type of street. Is this a 2-lane street? If there is a sidewalk or greenway, their locations, building restriction areas, if there's floodplain or for riparian areas, not necessarily things that they have to go out and find every level of wetland delineation. That's like a level of detail. What you see kind of excluded from this is much more detailed environmental due diligence, information on all the different encroachments and things that get into more construction details would not be included in this list. We are still listing a conceptual landscape plan. If there's a required buffer, we want to know it, but we don't need to see like their planting rates and what they're planting specifically at this stage. One of the main questions we had for the planning board, and for this board as well, is should a traffic impact analysis, or TIA, be required with this special use permit reduced site plan or not? There's advantages and disadvantages of each approach. The planning board voted to not include it within the reduced site plan, stating that there could be, based on the special use permit approval, there could be something that would change as a result of your approval that might change the unit count, that would then change the TIA results, or possibly even something to do with ingress and egress that could also impact, basically there's decisions you could make that could impact the TIA results. The opposite side of that is traffic's a very common thing for people to be concerned about. The public hearing is basically when they're going to come and voice that concern. So if it's not included at this stage, the board just needs to be aware of and comfortable saying that, well, it will be evaluated if it's something where it's applicable. Not all special use permits require a TIA, but if it's something that's generated enough trips to meet that threshold, generally 100 trips, peak hour trips per day, then you have to be prepared to say that will be reviewed. They'll have to meet basically if it's crossing certain thresholds, they'll have to meet their improvements called for by that TA, but you don't have that information yet. So it's just, I think, like I said, it's a trade-off in your comfort level with what level of information do you want to have present at the public hearing. So that's one question that I wanted you to consider as well. Like I mentioned, the planning board did review this. They voted unanimously to recommend approval with the TIA not included at this reduced site plan stage. But I did want the board to consider that, because that's going to be more something that you're dealing with, since the special use hearings or applications don't go to the planning board. I did include a statement of comprehensive plan consistency as well, referencing principle number 5, promoting our attractiveness to businesses and people of all walks of life. We are in approval, our staff is recommending approval of this text amendment, just with clarity from the board on when they want that TIA to come in. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, now, I'm gonna open the public hearing, and I guess we don't have an applicant presentation. Are there any questions from the board at this point? Okay. Comments from the board?
For me, I know we discussed this last time some, but to me, I think this is a way of getting a plan out in front of us early without the applicant having to invest as much time and money into it. I know those are expensive, and this gives us a chance to either add some critique at that point, or kind of maybe even show them that it's maybe not even a good use of their time. I like it. I think the idea for the traffic analysis would be more important to me after the reduced plan has been submitted, but before the master plan, like the planning board recommended. Even in the past, we've had times before we've discussed traffic problems, or traffic, we've had traffic analysis come before us where we've, they kind of maybe skirted it or weren't quite as, could have done it a little bit better. I think that would even give us a chance to make recommendations on that too. So I'm in favor of it as it is, and as it was approved by the planning board.
Okay.
I agree with Dr. Lutz, and the other piece for me, and I think David discussed this last time, nothing prevents the applicant from, especially with the TIA, nothing prevents them from walking in with their reduced plan and a TIA, or coming in with the full plan. It gives them the option, so that's a risk reward scenario that they need to weigh, and nothing prevents us from telling them that we're not ready to weigh in on their special use permit until we see a traffic plan based on the comments we get that night. So it seems like a quicker way to get folks that maybe don't have the assets or equity to float a whole idea, not knowing whether or not the political winds are going to shift, or there is an appetite for it.
Can I make an observation?
Yes.
I think I would recommend some language that reserves to the board the possibility that you may require a TIA based on what's presented to you these are, again, special use permit proceedings, so that won't be influenced by political winds. They're gonna be based on the evidence presented, and if you had opposition to a plan based on traffic, you may not want to deny that plan at that point. You may want to see a traffic impact analysis, but if your code didn't require it, then you couldn't compel the applicant to bring it, and you don't have it to look at. So I think I would recommend some language that allows the board to reserve the right to require that based on what's presented to you at the hearing. If you don't want to require it on the front end, at least reserve the right to require it as part of the process.
So like as a condition of the special use permit?
But even before you got to the point of making a decision on the permit, require it before you get to that decision.
Do you think we should reserve that right for any type of technical analysis, like a environmental impact or, you know?
Well, I think the thing about traffic is there's specific language in the statute that speaks to expert testimony on traffic issues. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak? You get 5 minutes. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, they're in opposition or in favor of this. All right. Well, gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Not gonna require it. Just gonna do this if you walk in.
I like the way he...
Yeah, I don't like going against my attorney recommends.
Yeah, I like the recommendation of the attorney as well.
That's something we should have them compile language for and then bring back to us, or?
Jim's working on it,
I think he's doing that right now.
but I guess my thought was, not a buyer beware, but if you take this route, you know, we make you aware that a TIA the traffic could impact the hearing, and if you so choose, you're free to, and the board may require it. But I'd yield to the person that passed the bar.
Well, I think I would say it's recommended, and the board may, based on the evidence presented, decide to require traffic impact analysis.
That's good to me.
Jim, the commission can incorporate that wording into the text amendment tonight and be done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think
So-
that was Commissioner Lutz, was that your question?
Yeah, we
Yes,
just want to
that's
make sure it
right.
was
Yeah.
worded correctly
Yeah, I don't want to.
and in the right place.
Now, I'll make a motion to approve the text amendments to sections 15.6 and 15.15 of the EDO, and to incorporate attorney's verbiage regarding recommended traffic impact analysis, as he stated, into the...
Okay, so we have a motion to approve sections 15.6 and 15.15 of the UDO, the amendments to those, with the reservation, with the attorney's verbiage to reserve the right for the town board to require a TIA. Is that
Yeah.
pretty accurate? Is that
I think
okay?
that sums it up.
Okay.
That get it all? Okay.
We may, with your blessing, we may polish it just a
That's
little.
Please do.
lovely, yes.
I think we understand the intent.
Okay. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right. Item 5C is a public hearing on the zoning text amendment to section 12.7 of the UDO regarding wall signage requirements. Mr. Bergmark again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is another text amendment request, in this case to Chapter 12 of the UDO, dealing with our wall signage requirements. you're being asked to hold this public hearing, consider taking action. You have a draft ordinance you could adopt as such action. This is being initiated by the town. We're requesting that we amend section 12.7, which is our principal use signs section, as it relates to wall signage, specifically for buildings over 25,000 square feet. Currently, the UDO has a few different categories of permanent commercial signage, those being monument signs, suspended single post signs, and wall, canopy, or projecting signs. So this amendment is specific to that last category of the wall, canopy, and projecting signs. The type and amount of signage will vary based on the size and location of the building to an extent right now. For wall signage, our current regulations say that you receive 1 square foot of signage per linear foot of store frontage. It has a maximum of 100 square feet of signage, so if you have a 50-foot wide front to your building, you would be allowed a maximum of 50 square feet. There are some additional amounts that are allowed for a corner building, where you could get some, if you're on a corner lot with streets on both sides, you get some additional signage for that corner side, but that 100-foot cap still applies. If you have 100 feet of frontage, the fact that you're on a corner doesn't really get you any more on that side. What our current regulations don't address well is some of these larger commercial developments. We're starting to get more interest from these. And so we looked at our standards, looked at what the industry is trying to accomplish, is used to having as a standard in terms of signage, and it made us realize that we probably need to look at making a change. The Wendell Falls grocery store is kind of what specifically brought this to the forefront, but that SPC mechanical building could very well have a similar issue. We just don't have many kind of bigger box stores, and we haven't had any kind of large new industrial sites that may need this category or a higher amount of signage than what we currently allow. We did do a peer review. So most of the municipalities we looked at use a percentage of the facade as the maximum allowed signage area. So kind of calculate the height and the width of that building and then use that to determine, and they'll have an overall cap. If it has streets on more than one side, they'll usually have a lower percentage of allowed signage on that side or back of the building facing roads. And many do cap the total wall signage per building or per facade. So the chart here is just showing some of those that we looked at: Apex, Chapel Hill, Garner, Knightdale, kind of comparing those to ours. As you can see, in the case of Apex, they have a 200 square foot per front facade and a max of 100 square feet per sign. Some of them limit how many signs can be, how that's distributed. Others don't. Chapel Hill, when I first looked at it, surprisingly actually allows more signage, 250 square feet per sign, but if you look at the percentage of when you can get that signage, it's a lower percent, so you have to have a really big building to be able to get up to that 250 square feet per sign. Knightdale's is sitting at 100 square foot per sign. Garner was a little bit lower, which was a little surprising to me as well. So we looked at these, how they're calculating it, how much they're allowing, and kind of walked away thinking we probably need to look at increasing ours. So what we did in our proposed amendment was kind of to permit additional signage. It is being based on that total amount of percent of the facade, like many of the others. We're doing this exclusively for buildings over 25,000 square feet in size, and proposing a maximum of 200 square feet per frontage facade. So that could allow, for a building that's just has a street in front of it and it's not on a corner lot, could allow for up to double the amount that we currently do, depending on how big the building is. The building would have to be big enough to justify that. So this, with the 25,000 square foot, this would generally capture things like larger industrial or office complexes, any of your kind of big box stores. It would not capture your more run-of-the-mill, well, maybe I shouldn't say run-of-the-mill, but your standalone pharmacies, hardware stores, restaurants. Those would still fall under our existing regulations. The reason for that was mainly that it's both easier to calculate for the applicant than trying to determine the height and the dimensions in order to figure out exactly how much signage they can have. It's also easier for us to enforce for these smaller buildings, and our current regulation hasn't really been a problem for these smaller buildings, but we did feel like we needed something for the larger ones. So as I mentioned, this would actually modify section 12.7. You have the new text being underlined. It's essentially just adding on to this table where on the bottom you have a category for wall signs, 25,000 square feet building or greater. And for the existing category, you're qualifying that the existing one capped at 100 square feet was for those under 25,000 and listing that maximum of 200 square feet per facade facing right-of-way, and also maxing it at 10% of the front facade, or if it's a rear or side facade, a maximum of 5%. And based on these calculations, the grocery store example would be able to get what they wanted. It would actually even leave a little bit of leeway beyond what they were looking for. But again, this would likely come up even with some of the other ones that we're having come before us now that our commercial side's starting to pick up. So the planning board at their October meeting voted unanimously to amend the section as proposed by staff. We are referencing principle number 5 of the comprehensive plan in terms of consistency and reasonableness, and staff is in favor of this request.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing. Staff's the applicant, I assume.
We
Are
are.
there any citizens that wish to speak on this topic, the zoning text amendment? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, do y'all have any questions?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
David, did you use an example, and then you spoke to the example of the Wendell Falls grocery store. What specific entity are you speaking of?
The Wendell Falls grocery store.
I tried. Figured it was worth a shot.
Yeah, their application said grocery.
David, did you guys look at all discussing, I noticed every other section, we have a maximum number per street frontage. Was that discussed at all, as far as setting a maximum number on that?
We are applying that. In terms of the maximum number there could be,
Yes.
it was discussed at the planning board level. They did not choose to incorporate that because it does raise the question of, if it's a big enough building, are you comfortable with there potentially being a 150 square foot for one sign on the front of your building? Like I said, it depended. Some municipalities limited it, others didn't. The example we had with the Wendell Falls grocery store, I think that their primary sign was shown as being 140 square feet. I did not think it looked too large or out of scale based on what I was shown, but that's just my opinion. We probably won't know until we see one if we think it's too big.
Just as a point of reference, did anybody measure Food Line sign? How many square feet would that be?
I did not. It would be under previous code, but it's a good question. I don't know offhand. I'm not sure.
It's got to be over 150, I would think. It's a pretty good size. Because of how far it sits back from the road, I don't think it's oversized.
Right.
But, okay.
It's kind of a hard thing to measure too, because you really need to know how tall is that sign, but it's...
We could get you a ladder.
All right.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the section 12.7 of the UDO regarding wall signage requirements.
We have a motion to approve the zoning text amendment to section 12.7 of the UDO. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? All right. I'm going to move now into our administrative items. Item 6A is the appointment to the Town of Wendell Tree Board. I'm going to hear from our town clerk, Megan Howard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So staff received the application for appointment to the tree board by Louis D. Piner on October 30th. Since the initial public outreach in spring, around June, the applications to the tree board were provided to East Wake High School and community groups in June. I didn't receive any response. I've reached out several times. I'll keep reaching out on a consistent basis to see if we get any student applicants. But right now, Mr. Piner is currently seeking to fulfill a term that expires in June of 2022 as an official member. Currently, he's an ex officio member. So right now, I'll pass out the ballots and we will take a vote.
Ooh, thank you.
Fancy.
All right, so the voting was unanimous to accept Louis D. Piner on the tree board. I'll send him a letter and get him on the docket, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you to Mr. Piner for his willingness to serve. All right, moving to our other business now. Item 7A is update on board committees by town board members. First, the Wendell Volunteer Fire Department Board of Directors, Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as we received a stellar audit earlier this evening, the fire department reviewed their audit at the last meeting, and it came back just as ours. They continue to move forward in the scaling up of staff, personnel, trucks, and other various items for the opening of Station 3.
Okay, thank you. And we'll hear from Commissioner Myrick at our next meeting about the East Wake Senior Center. Let's go into our commissioners' reports. Again, Commissioner Joyner.
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Boyette.
Nothing tonight.
Commissioner Lutz.
Nothing for me either.
Commissioner Carroll.
No comment.
I've got a couple reminders real quickly for you. Operation Christmas Child is starting their National Collection Week on Sunday, November 17th at Wendell Baptist Church. So you can stop by there and get a box and fill it up. That's always a lot of fun. And a reminder that the Wendell Wonderland is going to be Friday, December 6th from 5 to 9. There's going to be a Toys for Tots donation box. There are several of them scattered all around. As well as Santa, food trucks, a holiday market, tree lighting, the Lake Myra light show, live music, dance performances, trolley rides, cookie walk, a photo booth, a snow machine, and a Christmas cantata. And if you haven't seen it, I urge you to look at the promo that was filmed today. That looks like a lot of fun was had by all doing that. And I think it's on Facebook and YouTube and whatnot. It looked like they were having fun. Our staff works real hard. I'm glad they had fun doing that. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned. You seen that video?
No, I haven't yet. I wanted to, I guess we can do our next, first December meeting, but I wanted to see if I